opposition to Operation Fortitude yesterday. Are you embarrassed by the manner in which that played out?
Look, obviously it was a mistake. The press release was clumsy, as the Border Force Commissioner has described it. It was over the top and wrong, because we would never stop people randomly in the street demanding their visa details, so we don't do that sort of thing in Australia, and it will never happen under this government.
What was the highest level then within the Department of Immigration and Border Protection that press release was cleared by? Have you made inquiries there, and can you tell us?
My understanding is that it went to the Victorian commander of Australian Border Force.
It was released by the Federal Department, as I understand it. What was the highest level within the Federal Department that read and cleared that?
I wouldn't know.
Should the Force Commander Don Smith lose his job if he said that they were going to be doing that, stopping people in the street, and that's not the case?
Look, I just want to make it absolutely crystal clear that Border Force is doing an excellent job. It's doing a very important job, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as the government is concerned, we will never be in the business of stopping people randomly in the street to check on their visa details. That's just not the sort of thing that would ever happen in this country. What was happening as part of this Victorian police operation to, I gather, crack down on antisocial and unlawful activity at transport hubs was that anyone who the Victorian police suspected might have a visa issue would then be referred to Australian Border Force in the normal way. Unfortunately, the press release was very, very badly worded, but no one has been, no one ever will be, randomly stopped in the street for some kind of a visa check.
So what were the Border Force officers going to do then if they weren't going to stop people in the street?
They would do their job. If Victorian police referred a matter to them, they would deal with it.
Will you be seeking answers from Don Smith as to what went wrong?
No, because I've given a full explanation of exactly what the situation was.
What about if Peter Dutton, the press release went out from his department?
And it was an operational press release. There are all sorts of things that our operational agencies do. All sorts of press releases that go out from the Australian Federal Police, from the Australian Border Force, from government departments. All sorts of press releases go out all the time. But they go out under the authority of the relevant officials. They go out under the authority of the relevant agencies, and that all happens at arm's length from ministers. It all happens at arm's length from the executive government.
Was it wrong to have a press release put out at all? Was it part of a political plan to have national security announceable?
I think there's a bit of hyperventilating going on over there, and as I said, I've given a full explanation of this. There was a operation, a standard law enforcement operation by the Victorian Police. Australian Border Force was one of 7 agencies involved. Victorian Police routinely, if they suspect there could be a visa issue with someone who they're questioning, they refer it on to Australian Border Force in the usual way, and that's all that was ever intended yesterday.
So were you or was your office aware of the nature of this operation before it was announced?
Nope.
So your office had no awareness that Border Force would be involved in this operation at any time?
Nope. Nope.
Should ministers not take responsibility for the operational functions of their agencies?
But nothing happened here except the issue of a poorly worded press release. Absolutely nothing untoward happened except the issue of a poorly worded press release. Now, I know that there are people in our community who don't like the government's strong border protection policy. I know there are people out there in our community who don't like this government. Fair enough. No government is perfect. Government policy can be disagreed with. But all that happened here was that a poorly worded press release was issued. It was a routine operation. There was no additional involvement of Australian Border Force in this than is customary in any number of other routine operations. I just want to make it absolutely crystal clear But as far as this government is concerned, people will never be stopped in the street randomly and asked for their visa details. So that's the sort of thing that would never ever happen in this country.
Do you worry that the Border Force will now forever be known as the Border Pass?
I'm sorry?
Do you worry that the Border Force will now be known as the Border Pass, as we've seen on social media, in the media?
Can I just remind you, respectfully if I may remind you, that Australian Border Force is responsible for keeping our country safe and secure. Absolutely vital work they are doing, keeping our country safe and secure. They're keeping our country safe and secure in the Torres Strait, where I was this week. They're keeping our country safe and secure along with our military personnel in the seas to our north. They're working at our airports to ensure that would-be terrorists don't leave our country. They're working at our airports to ensure that would-be terrorists don't enter our country. They are performing absolutely vital work. They're working at our airports to ensure that drugs like ice don't come into our country. The idea that anyone would describe them this way is, well, I mean, I don't believe in demeaning the highly committed professional people who are keeping our country safe, and frankly anyone who does demean these people really should be a little bit ashamed of themselves.
Should we expect to see them on public transport and at public transport hubs more, even if they're not going to be stopping people for their visa papers?
Australian Border Force do their job. They do their job on our borders. They do their job on our borders. They do their job in airports. They do their job in the seas to our north. They do their job where cargo arrives for inspection from overseas. That's where you'll see Australian Border Force. They will be present where they need to be to do their job, and I think the Australian people are extremely grateful that, in part because of the work of Australian Border Force, we have stopped the boats, we have stopped the deaths at sea, we have stopped all of these illegal arrivals that were happening at the rate of almost 5,000 a month at their peak under the former government. I think people are really pleased that under Australian Border Force there's been a 75% increase in air cargo screening. There's been a 25% increase in sea cargo screening. There's been a massive increase in the interdiction of drugs and drug precursor material coming into our country. I think Australia Border Force does an absolutely outstanding job, and the idea that they should be pilloried on the basis of a badly worded press release just shows that some people readily get things completely out of proportion. Thank you.